What if I told you Diddy could walk away from all of this with 0 jail time, no criminal record, and a comeback waiting on the other side? It's not a conspiracy, not a theory, but a real legal best case outcome his team is fighting for right now, and how close we are to watching one of the most powerful men in hip hop beat the system. Diddy is facing life in prison, federal racketeering, sex trafficking, and enough felony charges to bury his legacy forever. The prosecution has his former lovers, industry insiders with secret recordings. But what if I told you the case is more fragile than it looks? By the end of this video, you'll know how Diddy's lawyers could collapse the federal charges, why a mistrial might be his secret weapon, and the exact strategy that could leave the prosecution empty-handed. But first, what would this best case outcome even look like? The dream outcome? A full acquittal in federal court. That means no conviction on RICO charges, no conviction on 18 U.S.C. 1591 sex trafficking, no conviction on wire fraud, transportation for prostitution, or any federal offense. How? His defense doesn't have to prove innocence. They've already shown right now that their client isn't the most liked person. Me personally, I don't believe that any of the domestic violence and situations that he's had with Cassie or any of his dealings in the music industry that have been shady warrant him not being held liable for those things. But these charges in this case are completely wrong. Let me explain. His defense doesn't have to prove innocence, just plant reasonable doubt. This is how they do it. They have to attack the credibility of key witnesses like Cassie and Don Richard. You have to challenge the timelines, the motives, and gaps in hard evidence. That's what's missing here, is a lot of hard evidence. They have to emphasize the consensual behavior, not the criminal enterprise. All the trips, everything that was together, the good times, the desire to have a career in the music industry, the desire to be wealthy that a lot of people that come to these wealthy and successful men are looking for. And even if one juror doubts the story, that's all it takes. He walks. If full acquittal doesn't happen, the second best win, a mistrial. And it's more likely than you think. Here's how. Cassie has been released, but she is also pregnant. If she is called back for further testimony and she just so happens to be in labor, that could trigger a mistrial. The jurors, if they are exposed to the media, and I gotta say the media is really slanted in one direction in this case, they want nothing to do with Diddy or anything about this case. They have made up their mind very clearly. But if the jurors were exposed to the media and biased media at that during the trial, that could trigger a mistrial. Number 3, if the prosecution fumbles with improper evidence or conduct. The prosecution has been doing a good job of kind of walking the line, keeping things very simple and clear. But if they have evidence that they're not supposed to have and they bring it, that is a loophole. That is something that will cause a mistrial. If the mistrial is caused by a prosecutorial error, the defense could file a motion to dismiss with prejudice, meaning Diddy can't be tried again. That's a silent victory. Now, here's where things get almost impossible. According to the Pew Research Center, only 2% of federal criminal defendants ever go to trial. And when they do, only 0.4% are acquitted. Let me say that again. Less than half of 1% walk free after a federal trial. The conviction rate is sky high. Why? Because most defendants take a plea deal. In fact, 89.5% plead guilty, usually to avoid the risk of trial altogether. So when you hear people talking about federal cases have a high conviction rate, they don't factor in the fact that so many of those people plead out or plead guilty and don't go to trial. So Diddy actually rejected a 5-year plea deal. Believe it or not, as much as people think Diddy is guilty, They did offer him a 5-year plea deal. And that's not just a bold thing to reject. It's damn near unheard of. We're in rare territory. He's stepping into the hardest arena in American justice, where the odds are brutally stacked against the defendant, and still saying, let's go. Okay, so even if Diddy wins in court, the civil lawsuits don't disappear. But with no criminal conviction, the civil cases weaken. Best case scenario, he settles them privately, no admission of guilt, non-disclosure agreements are signed. No trial, no testimony, no Netflix docuseries or Tubi or whatever. Just a quiet exit back into the world. Let's be clear, these are not minor allegations. Diddy is charged under RICO, the same law used to bring down the mafia. Add to that 18 USC 1591 for sex trafficking, and you're looking at a minimum of 15 years if convicted, possibly life. The feds are alleging that Diddy operated a criminal enterprise under the guise of his music empire, that he coerced women and men into drug-fueled sex parties for years, and that he used his power, money, and influence to silence or trap victims. How do we get to the best possible outcome? A total acquittal on federal charges. That means not guilty on every count. His legal team, led by Agnifilo and Brian Steele, has to discredit the star witnesses. They have to frame the alleged abuse as part of a consensual, albeit toxic, relationship. Show that no interstate trafficking, force, or fraud or coercion took place. And most importantly, break the idea that there was a coordinated criminal enterprise, because without that, RICO falls apart. I don't care what any other internet personalities are telling you. I heard some interesting stories in the past few weeks of people just, with their own biases, but I think it's going to be hard to make Diddy take a life sentence on this. You might be thinking, no way he beats this, but here's the truth. He's done it before. In 1999, he faced weapons and bribery charges, acquitted. In 2001, involved in a nightclub shooting, charges dropped. In 2023, settled a lawsuit from Cassie quietly within 24 hours. He didn't just walk, he ran the table. So ask yourself, with elite lawyers worth millions of dollars, media control, and legal experience under his belt, why wouldn't you think he could do it again? But the stakes are bigger than just Diddy. If Diddy walks free, what does that mean? Was it justice, or is it just Diddy winning again? Because this trial isn't just about one man's fate. It's a test of the system. I believe this is why Brian Steele actually joined this legal team, is because he evidenced in the Young Thug YSL RICO case that there's abuse of the law in this system. This is a system where money buys time and influence, and if used right, it can turn a life sentence into a brand reset. That's where the media comes in. The case is far from over. Just to bring you up to speed right now with the witnesses, you've had Cassie, you have had Don Richard, you've had Cassie's mom, you've had one of the strippers, the Punisher, you've had an assistant of Diddy, you've also had Cassie's best friend, ex-best friend that settled out of court in a case where Cassie and Diddy paid her for her pain and suffering. So you've had all these people come up. And what have they proven, really? So far, we've been in this case and we've seen baby oil is in high demand in the Combs home. There's a lot of drug use, and Diddy was addicted. He was an addict. You've also seen that these freak-offs were a regular occurrence. Now, are freak-offs enough to say that this man is running a prostitution ring? It seems as if the structure was that Diddy, in his relationship with Cassie, was having her set these sex parties up. And actually, it's been mentioned in court that Diddy was sitting in the corner with a veil over his face or a baseball hat on, trying to be anonymous, and while Cassie was engaging in intercourse with these paid prostitutes. So Cassie exchanges hands with the money. Cassie is also in charge of this. Like, So how can we say now Diddy is somehow responsible? What if Cassie was inviting Diddy to these parties? What if a lot of this was actually Cassie's idea? A lot of people want to talk about the coercion, and I understand there's room for that argument. But what if Cassie actually did take an active part in this? I think some of her testimony on the stand actually leads to that fact and actually lends to the fact that she was more involved in this and enjoying it at times than people would give her credit for. Right now, they want her to be purely a victim. They want her to not have any type of responsibility in this. I think she has some type of immunity deal set up, so I'm not sure about that, because honestly, if there is a criminal organization, she should be part of it at this point. I'm sorry. It might not be a popular opinion, but it's real. So then you have Dawn Richard, who is a member of Dirty Money, who was destroyed on the stand. Like literally, they just ravaged her because she was conflicting in her testimony. And she's also currently suing Diddy. But this is somebody who had issues with and saw actions that she did not approve of from Diddy, abusing Cassie being one of them, and then went back to Diddy to get her career back on track. So this is the problem here. Diddy is starting to see a lot of people in this case that are really turning on themselves. They're turning on themselves to be some type of, I don't know, some type of saint here. And while Diddy is fighting for his life right now because he literally may stay in prison for his whole life, a lot of the stuff that we're seeing that Diddy is doing is stuff that took place with Hugh Hefner and the Playboy Mansion. This is why this is strange, because all of a sudden, out of nowhere, this man is now being hit with probably the hardest case we've seen a celebrity be hit with. They are saying you are worse than John Gotti. They're saying you are worse than all the other figures that went down for this. This is a new level. And like I said, there's all types of salacious details. You can go to some of the other channels for that on what happened in these things. But should someone be penalized for being a freak and participating in freak-offs? Because remember, those charges that we have listed, none of them are domestic violence. If domestic violence was on the docket, if domestic violence was the basis of this case, Diddy should go to jail 100%. You'll never get me to disagree with that. But since we're dealing here in RICO, we have to prove those things, right? Or else we're just wasting time. We're just making headlines for TMZ. So we need to be clear about what's really going on here and what's not. And I think in my mind, I'm thinking there's no way they can get a jury to agree 100%, every last juror to agree that this man should spend his whole life in jail because of these actions. That's where we're at with it. Do you think Diddy will walk? Anyway, let me know what you think about it in the comments. If you like this video, like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell notification for all uploads. This is Faucette Media.